I once did a poll for BookFox where I asked fiction writers what their main problems were, and I was really surprised to see that pacing came in as their fifth most common problem, right behind stuff like plot and characters and other really common big problems. So writers struggle with pacing. They don't know when to go fast and when to go slow and how to manage all that time in their novel. Thankfully today, I am going to solve that problem for you. We're going to go through the 9 steps that every author needs to be able to control the pacing in their novel. Let's start with point number 1. Alternate the pacing. So you don't want to write a book that's always fast-paced because readers will get tired and they'll burn out. Really, your goal should be to alternate between slower pacing and faster pacing. If you have a scene that's really slow-paced and you're like, I'm worried that my reader's going to find it boring, then what you do is you simply place it after a really high-paced scene and the readers will welcome the breather. For example, Saving Private Ryan starts with this wild scene of soldiers charging Normandy Beach. It's action-packed. It is death-filled. There's the clattering of gunfire. So in contrast, the next scene is people typing on typewriters. It's slow, it's meditative, and they're typing the letters that say, oh, your son's been killed in action. For another example of this, look at The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. You have a high-octane scene like Katniss fighting in the initial bloodbath at the cornucopia, but then she flees into the forest, and the pacing slows down a little bit. She's looking for water. She tries to find a place to sleep. And if you're not sure how your pacing is, I'd recommend joining BookFox Lab, which is my one-on-one mentorship and coaching program for writers. We're having a great time with the 24 writers currently in our program, and you can join our next cohort. Just check my website for details. The second pacing tip that you absolutely need to know for your novel is dialogue can both speed up and slow down. I used to tell writers you should set a little dialogue alarm in your brain, and here's what I mean by that. If you find that you have a chapter or 2 chapters and certainly 3 chapters in a row that are all very dialogue heavy, there's a little alarm that should go off in your brain like, I think I've slowed down the pace of my story too much. Clearly, you need to break up those dialogue chapters with a chapter that is more action and events and movement. But I don't mean to apply that dialogue always slows down a book. In fact, I think most of the time, dialogue, if it's just a page or 2, speeds up the story. Let me show you 2 pages from the Italian novelist Elena Ferrante, her book, Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. So here we have a dialogue-heavy page, and we have a non-dialogue page. Let me ask you, which one is faster to read? The one with lots of white space, right? You're gonna blaze through that one because there's not as many words, and that's what dialogue does because you're indenting every single line, so there's less text on the page. So small sections of dialogue, that speeds your novel up. Large sections of dialogue that don't really move the plot forward end up slowing your book down. Now, this next point is the most important thing I'm gonna say in this entire video. It is point number 3, sever scene duration from time. Beginning writers tend to write a scene based on how long it takes in clock time. If it would take a long time in real life, then their scene is long. Advanced writers, on the other hand, lengthen or shorten a scene based upon interest. How interesting is this going to be for the reader? If it's going to be super interesting, then lengthen it out. If it's going to be not so interesting, shorten it. And I think the right pacing for your book maintains the appropriate length depending on how fascinating it is for the reader. So if it's boring, zip right through it. You know, something like, then we all ate dinner. If nothing happened at dinner, then boom, you've just covered like 1 hour in 1 second of reading time. However, if it's really fascinating, then slow down. Take your time. The reader's going to stay with you because they're engaged in the material. I think of Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch when there's the bombing in the museum at the very beginning of the book. Time slows down. It dilates. She spends many paragraphs. She spends pages talking about the sensory impressions of this young boy who just experienced this bombing. Now, this next point is one you should never forget. It is number 4. Use your sentences to control pacing. So this is something I cover a lot in my sentence course in Bookfox Academy, but basically the length and punctuation of your sentences controls how fast the reader reads them or how slowly the reader reads them. You can have very long, rushed, frenetic sentences, and that sort of makes the reader read more quickly, or you can have shorter sentences with a lot more punctuation, a lot more periods, a lot more commas, stuff like that, and that will slow the reader down. Now, I want to mention a very special author that I've never mentioned on this entire channel before. His name is Cormac McCarthy. In Blood Meridian, Cormac McCarthy has this very famous scene where Native Americans are attacking the mercenaries, and it's just this wild rush of a sentence that just sort of throws you headlong into the action. I'm not going to read all this, but you can pause the video and check it out. It is a wild scene. Sometimes he goes for really long without even including as much as a comma. So of course you're going to read that faster because there's no natural stopping points. On the other hand, check out a book like The Reluctant Fundamentalist by Mozid Hamed. Excuse me, sir, but may I be of assistance? Ah, I see I have alarmed you. Do not be frightened of my beard. I'm a lover of America. The interjections of sir and ah and the commas that accompany that, as well as the frequent periods, it makes us read that a tiny bit slower. I want to give some exceptions though. If you have a sentence which is very long, but is just a long description or list or something, and there's no movement and no action, sometimes that can actually slow it down. And on the other hand, if you have very short sentences, but there's a lot of action happening, it can feel like the pacing goes quickly. So these aren't hard and fast rules. It's just something to keep in mind as a way to influence your pacing. I really love this next point. It is number 5. Use information density to control speed. So if you have very long descriptions or a lot of world building, that is going to tend to slow down the pacing of your book. While on the other hand, if you have a section that is very plot heavy, very action heavy, okay, that's going to speed it up. In Children of Men by P.D. James, she chooses to start the first 12 pages of her book with sort of this world building of like, look, here's a world in which nobody can get pregnant anymore. So it's this post-apocalyptic novel. And she doesn't only go into the world building aspect, she also has some philosophizing. Like, what's wrong with us that we can't figure out why people stopped getting pregnant? That was a deliberate choice by her to sort of buck the trend of starting with an action scene and just be like, no, like, let's talk about this world and what it means for humanity that we're going to die out as a human race because nobody can get pregnant. And of course, after that initial chapter, the book speeds up and we get characters and we get plot and we get action. We get all the ingredients of a faster paced novel. Another great example of how to use information density is Lee Child's novel Gone Tomorrow, and this is a Jack Reacher story. The novel starts with Jack Reacher sitting in a subway car and he's going through this 11-point checklist to determine whether someone else in the car is a suicide bomber. Eventually he gets up and confronts this woman, and the woman isn't wearing a suicide vest, instead she has a gun. And the book does a wonderful job alternating between more action moments. Oh, this woman is pointing a gun at me at a very awkward spot on my body. And then he switches to more information to slow down the scene. So he goes into how much the gun weighs, what the recoil is like. Now, if Lee Child just gave the action in this scene, the whole thing would be over in like half a page. But instead, it lasts 6 chapters. And so what he's doing is he's alternating the action with information, with action, with information, and he has us on the hook the whole time because it's such a tense scene with so much suspense. This is a great example of how to slow down a scene, and also proof that sometimes you do need to slow down a scene a lot more because you have the reader in the palm of your hands. So just like work that a little bit, make them sweat a little bit. Let's continue that theme of slowing down with number 6. Slow down with these 2 techniques. I do think that if you're not taking advantage of slower pacing, you miss out on 2 absolutely crucial components of a good novel. The first one is internals, meaning the character's thoughts and feelings. If you're going so fast with your book, you end up just skipping over their thoughts and emotions, which kind of leaves the book a little dry. Let's look at Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's on my page 65. There is a paragraph that talks all about why she's staying home from school. And it's because her boyfriend embarrassed her by going to prom with someone else, and so she can't bear the shame of showing her face at school. It's about what she thinks of him, it's about what she thinks of herself, and it's not a particularly fast-paced paragraph. It's just her thoughts. But diving into her mind, diving into her emotions, diving into her psychology helps us feel like the book is so much richer of an experience with this actual human being. If you've ever read a New York Times bestseller and walked away from it feeling just a little thin and a little bit unsatisfied, it's probably because they didn't take a couple of moments and just dive into the character's psychology a little bit. The second place where you definitely want to take time to slow down the pacing in your book is so you can have time to cover things like theme. I think of a book like Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was made into the movie called Blade Runner. And the theme that it's wrestling with is what makes us human? What separates an android robot being from someone who is truly human? Is it biology? Is it consciousness? Is it empathy? And if we can't tell the difference, does the distinction even matter? So there are parts in this book where it does slow down a little bit to wrestle with that deeper question. question, but that makes the book so much richer. That's the core of what the book is talking about. We got 3 more wonderful points in this video. Let's get to number 7. Employ shorter and longer chapters. Now, you would initially think, and you can be forgiven for thinking this, that shorter chapters or having a lot of minor little scenes slows down the pacing because there's a pause, right? There's a break. But here's the truth. It takes you almost 0 time to turn the page or for your eyes to skip white space and go to the next scene. So actually, it makes you feel like you're reading faster and increases the pace. So here are some books with some shorter chapters, and the length of these chapters ended up making the book feel faster. You have a book like All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Very short chapters, it moves very quickly. You have The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. Dan Brown loves having extremely short chapters. You have The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, where most chapters are, say, a page or 2 long. Or look at The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. In this book, you have 51 chapters in 226 pages. So that's roughly about 4 pages a chapter. So if that's your style, if you want to have a bunch of very short chapters, it will end up making your book feel a little faster and make the reader feel like, oh man, I'm such a fast reader, I just blazed through this novel. Well, it's because there was extra white space, but don't tell them that. Let them feel like they're amazing. Another strategy, and this is a really good one, is to alternate between shorter and longer chapters depending upon what the book needs to do, either to speed up or to slow down. Let's look at Jan Martel's Life of Pi. This is a novel with 100 chapters, and a lot of them are super short. Sometimes they're a paragraph long. However, he slows down so much in chapter 9, which is 20 pages long, because it inverts the entire story. This is the climax. It's so important that he gets this right. And he's really upending what the reader thinks about the entire novel, so he has to slow down. This can't be a short chapter. So it's not just a shock in terms of the information he's giving. He also wants to shock you with, we've been going along at this steady pace, this really fast pace, and now I'm going to slow down and just like give you a gut punch that makes you question everything. I love the concept of this 8th tip. It's what writers struggle with the most, and it is number 8, the rubber band principle. So the main question that writers have is, how do I know when to slow it down and when to speed it up? This is a great question, and it's very key, because sometimes you're like, I don't know whether I should cut off 500 words from the scene or whether I need to add 1,000 words. Imagine the pacing on your novel like a rubber band, okay? You want to have fast pacing, and you can stretch it because that keeps the readers on the hook. But if you keep fast pacing for too long, then the rubber band will end up breaking. So at some points, you want to stretch, and then you want to come back and have discussion of theme, and you want to have some just chit chat and dialogue and have some slower pace, and then you can stretch the pace and speed it up again. So your job when trying to decide whether to speed it up or slow it down is figure out, like, have I been stretching a lot? Have I been really pushing the pace a lot? If so, then take a moment, settle down, like have a calmer scene, and then go for the fast pacing again. And another great thing to do is to get some good beta readers and ask them 2 questions. 1, were you bored at any point? Because that could be a sign that the pacing was too slow and you need to cut down some things from there. And the second thing you can ask them is, were you confused at any point? Because sometimes, not all the time, sometimes that's a sign that you've gone a little bit too quickly. You need to slow it down a little bit more and allow the reader some time to process the information you've been giving them. Okay, and now it's time for our last point, number 9. There is no one-size-fits-all. I am giving general principles in this video. The pacing for your book really depends on what genre you're trying to write. If you're trying to write a thriller, then of course the pace is going to be much faster. If you're trying to write a character-based literary novel, then yeah, the pace is going to be slower. So there is no right pacing. It's only what's right for your book. Think of the pacing of a Marilyn Robinson novel as opposed to a Michael Crichton novel. One is thoughtful and beautiful and measured and deep. And the other one is action-based and suspense all the time and sort of a lickety-split pace. And remember that different readers want different pacing. Some readers don't want to come to a book and just be hurtled through the plot. They come for a more measured, relaxed, hammocky experience. So yes, you can go too fast in your novel, and it's all about knowing who your audience is and what the right pace is for this particular story. Do not forget to check out BookFox Lab. The link is in the description. It will help you a lot with pacing and everything else with your book. And also, I hope this video has helped your pacing in your novel. Good luck with pacing in your book, and see you later.